Hello and welcome to Unbecoming with Elena Joy. I'm your host, Elena Joy. My pronouns are she, her. My visual description is I'm a short white lady with short silver curly hair and a big smile. I'm so glad you're with us today. Today's interview day. It's a little different than the past few episodes that I've been doing. And I realized, man, doing interviews is a source of joy for me. Being able to talk with people that I find fascinating, whether I know them in my personal, professional life or not, has been such a source of joy. And accessing joy right now is an act of rebellion. So I'm digging that. And if you know any people that you think I would find fascinating, you let me know. Send me an email at elenajoy@latitudeleaders.com or contact me through the website. Very easy to find. So today, we're having a great conversation with Hanna Miller. She's a leadership consultant. Her consultancy company is actually called Ringmaster Consulting because she got her start being a leader in the circus industry. I mean, we're talking like 65 horses, 500 shows a year. Can you imagine being in charge of that? I cannot. The horse poop alone, I'd be out. But it's a great conversation, and we talk a lot about her framework, conscience-driven leadership, which is for leaders who prioritize the people they work with and lead with some intuition and some guts. We explore kind of where our frameworks converge and where they're different, and it's just a good time. So without further ado, Hanna Miller. I am so glad you're here. I am chatting with Hanna today, who is the leader of conscience-driven leadership. Welcome to our conversation, Hanna.
Hello, welcome. I'm super excited to be here.
It's going to be so fun. In lieu of introductions, it is describing kind of our positionality, the lenses of identity that we're looking through, especially going into this conversation around leadership. So I'll go first, and then I'd love to hear from you. So the positions of identity that I would be looking through the lens of today would definitely be a queer woman who's living in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. I'm very neurodivergent, ADHD, diagnosed as an adult, and the diagnosis has changed my life. I'm the mom of 4 kids, including one kiddo who's trans. Another part is simply how I am working within capitalism right now. I think that's a very much a lens that I am focused on right now, and I think it brings a lot to the conversation we're having today. So I'd love to hear from you.
This is a fun exercise, unrehearsed. It's okay. I like on the spot. I'm a lady, no kids. I'm child-free by choice, and I'm very happy about it. I was raised in a circus, so that definitely influences my perspective. But more than that, and this is something I've been kind of grappling with lately, I have a family legacy around power, spectacle, audience, and risk because I'm like a 6th generation power navigator. My great grandmother was elected to Congress when most women couldn't vote in the United States. My grandmother left Washington Society to go breed horses in Arizona because that was her passion. My 6th great grandfather had this lawyer friend he really liked. He owned this newspaper in Chicago that he built up into something called the Chicago Tribune. And one of his earliest subscribers was this tall, lanky lawyer named Abe Lincoln, who he wound up getting elected president. So power as a currency is something that I feel like I have a family connection to. I really feel like has impacted conscience-driven leadership, and power and conscience aren't things that are at odds to me. They're things that are integrated. And so I feel like that's related. I'm a dog mom. I live in Spain now for about 18 months. I live near the sea. I like the sea.
I've been rifling through your book, and your stories about the trust that is developed with horses and how that plays into leadership are honestly mind-blowing. It almost deserves its whole own episode. So maybe we'll do that later. But thank you for that. I think our audience appreciates that deeper knowing of who we are and what we're bringing to this conversation and where we intersect and where the differences are.
Yeah, navigating that privilege has been a big part of my life and figuring out how do I use that in service of people? Because that's what I feel like I'm here to do is help people break down obstacles because I've had the opportunity to learn how obstacles break down.
Yes. I feel like what you've just described is almost the epitome of the conscience-driven leader. someone who has become aware of their own privilege and other aspects and have been able to identify how can I deconstruct the barriers. And now that I know how to do that, how can I help others do that as well? Thinking about your conscience-driven leadership framework, I redefined it for myself into they are leaders that have the ability to see, to radically acknowledge reality and then change their reality. And then when they see that someone else's reality could be changed as well, they feel driven, compelled to be able to help with that change as well. That was my translation, my definition
I
of
love it.
conscience-driven leadership. Yeah, would
I
you
love
say
it.
it's
Conscience-driven
accurate?
leadership. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you saw yourself in it and you redefined it in a way that speaks to you. And I think that definition is completely accurate. And conscience-driven leadership is new in the world, right? I feel like I midwifed it into being over the last couple years. And it's still very much finding its language, it's finding its people. And so getting to talk to other conscience-driven leaders is like so generative and important to me right now, because I really like that perspective you have, that it's people who are able to radically adjust their perception of reality. It's like a core skill in conscience-driven leadership I call pivotry, which is the ability to, like, you got two people looking out windows of a house, and one of them is like, outside there are mountains, and the other one says, outside there's an ocean. And they're both yelling at each other that the other one's wrong because they're looking out their own windows. And pivotry is the ability to climb up on the roof and notice that that way is mountains and that way is ocean. So everybody's right. More than one thing can be real at once. And when we can acknowledge that truth of every situation, we can then help people turn around and look out the other window.
Whew. I feel like you've given me the best analogy for how I'm trying to describe where multiple realities, even contradictory realities, can exist. You look out one window, we see ocean. That's real. That's valid. That is my reality. Look out the other window, we see mountains. That's real. That's my reality. And even though they contradict, it is the leadership's ability to rise above and get a full perspective, a full view. Then that allows that leader to give validity to both of those perspectives. Neither one is right, neither one is wrong. We don't have to be binary about this, but we do have to work within the reality of what everyone is experiencing as well as what the leader can see.
This is something I learned in the circus as a 24-year-old manager dealing with 18-year-old circus performers who are fifth generation circus. They've grown up in the circus. They've never been in the real world. And man, whatever just happened in the ring that they're mad about, I used to have to explain this to them. And I called it the perception versus reality lecture, where I would explain to them that the thing they just experienced was absolutely true because it's based on where they were standing, and it happened to their minds exactly the way that they see it. But the other person was standing somewhere else, and their perception created their reality. And so I can acknowledge that what you said is true. And now that I've done that, can we acknowledge that what they said might also have some truth to it, and we can start to de-escalate this? And it worked a surprising amount of the time.
Amazing. Woo. So in my framework, I have an idea of signal versus static. And so signal is that felt sense of alignment between identity and behavior. When my identity, who I believe I am, who I am, and my behavior align, that feeling of resonance that I get is signal. And static is everything from the external expectations, external habits, external patterns of thought, etc. And I try to really drill down the idea that static is not bad. Again, we're not being binary about this. It's just not yours. And that's what makes it static. I too train leaders to first understand that they have an intuition, they have a gut feeling, they have an instinct, whatever words they want to use with it. I'm not precious about it. And once they're able to feel that, it's like that first step into, oh, that's my signal. And now I can make decisions based on that signal. And I found it really interesting in your conversations around intuition. You simplified this for me, and I appreciate it. Intuition is the feeling of stop or go, which really, it does necessitate that we need to create the options, right? It is not, I don't know what to do, and now I'm waiting for my intuition to tell me where to take the first step. It is, I am on this path. This option has been presented to me. which one is my signal? Which one aligns? Which one can I feel my behavior and my identity aligning with it? So with that being my framework and my ideas around intuition and such, where do you see the crossover with conscience-driven leadership?
There's so much, right? I think we both are talking about intuition. We're both talking about being able to recognize your inner voice and feeling. I talk about integrity a lot as a sense of wholeness, right? Integrity, a bridge doesn't have integrity because it does what it says it's going to do. A bridge has integrity because it's complete. All the pieces are there. And when we fail to uphold our own integrity by having boundaries and insisting on our wholeness, our relationships lose integrity, and the people we're in relationship with, their integrity is challenged. And so I think all of this is really, really connected. My first leadership experience of intuition was very much actually a stop. And I found when I was running my show, people had a lot of urgency. We were doing 500 shows a year. A lot of things needed to happen yesterday. But there was like a certain quality of somebody would come to me with, why haven't you done this? This needed to be done and it's really complicated. I would have this visceral reaction that it was wrong and I could not move forward. And so that's the voice of intuition I learned to listen to first. That was my signal in the static, that the urgency was static, the pressure from outside was static, and I didn't have the information I needed to move forward. And so I would be like, nope, can't do it. There's something missing. There's a missing piece. There's some piece of information or some action that hasn't happened yet that I need to understand before I can make the right decision to move forward. So like, sorry, buddy, urgency is the enemy, not moving forward on that. When I was researching trust physics and I discovered that the psychological research on intuition has found that that's what it says. It says stop or go. That resonated to me because I was like, oh, the stop is a lot of it. I think for a lot of people, yeah, the signal is just sometimes saying, wait, not time yet. You don't have everything you need to move forward. And I think for those of us conditioned female by the world, right, that's one of the things I should have led with, like conditioned female by the world, full of all that crappy programming. I think listening to that not ready yet voice has been really drilled out of us early on, right? We're supposed to be accommodating. We're supposed to respond to other people's urgency at this pre-cognitive level. And so it's like a deep static, but there's a deeper signal that can step in there and be like, nope.
Yes. And I want to touch on something that you've talked about in one of your previous episodes around anxiety and how it can be a distortion of the conscience, right? And I think that I bring this up now because so many leaders are struggling with burnout. Every time I teach a burnout prevention workshop, these feelings come up of anxiety, of this unknown. When I have an option in front of me and I don't feel that hell yes, is that the anxiety, the distortion, or is that my signal? So I'd love to hear from you how you differentiate that with your clients.
Yeah. So distortions are the static that sounds like signal, right? It's the static that there's almost a voice in. But it's usually related to something specific. And conscience-driven leadership has 6 distortions that are named. And anxiety is the product of several of them, right? Is it a boundary distortion? Are you having a boundary that's being crossed? Distortions are really yummy because we all have them, right? They're the lying voices in our head. How can you tell it's anxiety and not intuition? Anxiety is on a loop, right? Anxiety is saying, what if? Anxiety is leading you away from yourself, ultimately.
Right. It's not pointing to anything. You really identified that loop. I know for a lot of people, myself included, the spin outs, right? When we're going into that circular reasoning and it doesn't seem like my 3 hours of thinking about this has gotten me anywhere. That's when I really know I'm swimming in the static. I'm swimming in the distortion. And for me, even when my signal says wait or not yet or no, it feels grounded versus like I'm trying to escape something, like I'm trying to avoid something. It feels like I'm still calibrated to myself versus calibrated to avoiding a certain experience like burnout. Right?
Absolutely. And I think distortions are usually, they come from kind of early programming. They come from something I talk about in trust physics is our armors, which are things we learned, like basically our trauma responses, things we learned to do that protected us at one point in our life, but they no longer serve us because we're not in that situation anymore. Our brains just don't know it, right? We're afraid based on past stuff. So like a lot of anxiety, any distortion of stuff, definitely unpack that with your therapist.
You don't play a therapist on the internet? That's my
I don't
real?
play a therapist. I mean, coaching and therapy are definitely cousins, right? Like
Yeah.
coaching comes from positive psychology, but yeah, if we're talking about your deep dark trauma, like I'm
Your
happy
past.
to hear about it, but I can't help you with whatever happened in the past and be like, that sounds like a great topic for your therapist.
Amen.
But it's hard to figure that out at first. And I think the burnout we're experiencing now is genuinely due to a lack of conscience in leadership. Like it's not named on accident. There is a capitalism. You brought it up earlier. Capitalism has created a system without conscience where the people who are rewarded, the people who climb leadership ladders in capitalist institutions are rewarded for having a lack of conscience, right? Prioritizing money over people, quick money over people specifically, is capitalism rewarding a lack of conscience. So you're not building a system that supports the people who do the work, which is, spoiler alert, how you build a long-term successful business. Longevity of success is in people, and leadership researchers have known that for 60 years or so. But if the goal is a quick return, you cut people, you cut the support systems, you don't prioritize the things that make people stay. And money is not what makes people stay. Culture is what makes people stay. And so we're seeing this on the global scale too, right? Like the lack of conscience in leadership is impacting everyone everywhere, right? We're being fed really consistently this line that other people are our problem, when really the lack of systems that support people is our problem. I saw this comic one time, and I'll send it to you so you can include it, but it's really easy to describe. So there's a field of stumps that said, and there's a sign that says eucalyptus forest, and it's just an empty field of stumps. And there's a little koala holding onto a stump, trembling. And there are two scientists with their clipboards, and they're observing, and they say, man, this koala has a nervous system issue.
Well, you just said the thing out loud, didn't you, Hannah?
Yeah. I'm like, we're living in a world of stumps. That you're having anxiety or burnout is a reasonable response to lack of forest.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Geez, you have validated something so deep in me, because in the last 3 weeks, I have been sent by friends, well-meaning friends, link after link after link on these talks around resilience. And maybe there's something, a gold nugget here, right? And maybe there is or isn't. I didn't listen to it because to me, resilience is a bad word. To me, resilience is a certain population refusing to take accountability for their actions and instead saying your nervous system is the problem. And so how can you be more resilient? How can you build your nervous system up to be resilient when we shouldn't have to be resilient?
This is why the first book I wrote for conscience-driven leadership is about trust physics, which is the relational element of conscience-driven leadership, because trust physics is about accountability. And you can't do anything without it, right? It's about integrity. It's about boundaries. It's about how to do accountability in a way that builds relationship instead of damaging. But it's also about all the reasons that it's really, really hard. And yeah, resilience. Generally, as humans, we are not comfortable with other people's discomfort. My newsletter was, you're gaslighting your dog, because we all do this to our dog, right? There's fireworks, there's thunderstorm, our dog is scared, and we bring it on the couch and we go, oh, poor baby, it's okay, it's okay. And what we're saying is, your nervous system is lying to you. It's not okay. Your dog's not okay. And instead, what we need to learn to say is, yeah, that's a loud noise, it's scary, you want a cookie? Like, how can we help you make a choice that makes your nervous system feel better, right? Like, how about I throw the cookie across the room? How about I get your toy and we play with that? Like, how can I do something that feels good to combat the real bad feeling that you're having? But like, culturally, when I say it's okay, or when somebody says, oh no, it's okay, to me, they're soothing themselves, not you. Right? They're not saying you're okay. They're saying, I'm not okay with your discomfort, so I'm trying to get rid of it. I don't know if you saw Parks and Rec, but the episode where Rob Lowe has to learn to say that sucks. Don't fix the problem. The problem is that the world is a problem right now. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes right back to that, the ability to radically acknowledge reality in order to change reality, because we can't change the experience we or someone else or both of us are having until we can radically acknowledge the reality that they are experiencing, and probably we are too. We're just trying to keep some blinders on.
Yeah, because it's painful, it's uncomfortable, and we avoid discomfort.
So from there, I think there's something very important that we can address that is so prevalent in so many people's lives. The highest rate of burnout that is happening on leadership levels right now is that middle manager level, right? Being in the messy middle where you have to take the strategy from above you and execute it with the people below you. We also know that the biggest reason, as you alluded to earlier, the biggest reason that people leave their positions is because of the relationship with their manager or lack thereof, right? So the leaders that are in my community and my audience are likely conscience-driven leaders, right? And they are navigating their way towards that identity. And yet, if they are in the messy middle, they often feel like they are employing the execution of the strategy at the cost of the humans that are in their lives. And they don't feel like they have the power to create change, even if they can see the change, right? As a conscience-driven leader, they can see the change that needs to happen, but they feel they don't have the power or authority to make that happen. How can managers in the messy middle employ conscience-driven leadership, if not just for themselves and maybe for the people around them? Thoughts?
I talk in the second season of my podcast, we're focused on trust physics. And so we were talking about boundaries and talked about boundaries as the permission of what interacting with you is allowed. Like, how far will you go? And it's about knowing what those are and being really clear about it. And so I think the thing you can gain in middle management is really deep self-knowledge about what your boundaries feel like in leadership, what it feels like when they are crossed, because they're going to be, what it feels like when you allow them to be crossed, because your upper management is going to cross your boundaries because they can. And that's kind of their job, is to put pressure on you to accomplish something that they honestly may not even know how to do, because often the senior manager doesn't have technical expertise in what you're doing. Understanding when that happens and what it feels like, I think, is a valuable exercise for that time in someone's career. And understanding too, how not to give too much, because you giving more than you have does not serve the people that you lead, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't. So insisting on integrity in that relationship by being really honest, by being super upfront. One of the things I learned early on was I would tell everybody that I worked with that in the circus, I was like, tell me everything. I will always give you the reason the answer is no. I want to hear your ideas. I want to know what the problem is. I will often not be able to give you what you need, but that doesn't mean I don't care. But I will tell you why I can't. And I will do my best to help you understand the bigger picture so that you understand why I can't say yes to that. Because saying yes to you means saying no to something else. So there's always a cost. And that only gets worse as you get higher in leadership. It feels like it's going to be so much better when you get out of the messy middle. And the truth is that the weight is way higher the more you climb into executive roles. You have to make decisions that you know are going to hurt people, even if you were a conscience-driven leader. Learning to live with yourself when you're not the owner of the decision, but you're the executor of the decision. It's one of the toughening up things that leadership requires.
Absolutely. And I do feel like I grasp for power. I grasp for sovereignty when I am swimming in the static, right? And I feel like a piece of power that many of the middle managers that I work with aren't seeing is that stat that 70% of people, when they leave, they're leaving because of their manager, the relationship with their manager. So you, as the middle manager, have sovereignty over that relationship. And finding a way, I use core values, other people use different things, but finding a way to authentically create strong connection with the humans, that always trumps pay. It trumps schedule. It trumps everything that you have no control over. And therefore, that lever is that relationship. And I think a huge part of that relationship is the trust, is the accountability, is transparency. And when I'm working with leaders, the tool that I teach them for that is the focus on impact over intent, right? most of us have positive intent. And when we can work with our teams to find an impact that we all can get behind. Again, when I'm doing it with their core values. How does each person's core values intersect with this impact? Because then we've got a really strong, authentic driver. And then we have an ability to be transparent, right? This person comes to me and says, I've got this issue, this issue, this issue. I'm the leader that knows that the strategy coming down from the top is going to make those issues worse. And it's again going back to that impact. Okay, is this creating a barrier to impact, or is this just feelings? Is this just perception? Is this just drama and story? Okay, there is a barrier to impact. Now, let's acknowledge that barrier and figure out a way to resolve it so that we can all keep pushing towards that impact. And I found it's a really useful tool for managing up as well. We agreed that we wanted to see this impact, and yet the strategy that you are trying to employ is creating a barrier to that impact that you say you want. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think impact is the language that upper management speaks. As a middle manager, your job is to translate in both directions between humanity and an impact. Because upper management speaks an impact, they want to hear about impact. They don't care that people are hurting. They can't do anything about that. That's not their job. Their job is to get those people to produce the impact that the company is trying to. So understanding what is the actual outcome that upper management wants from your people, and then taking that message and delivering it with a great deal of humanity so that people understand that you care about them, that you as a person care about them as a person.
Yes.
That is what makes them able to listen and able to hear what it is you need from them. It's one of the things that's super hard about this is that people don't usually get promoted to middle management because they have demonstrated great translation skills, right? Because they've demonstrated that they care deeply about people and they know how to translate that care into doing something. People get promoted because they're great individual contributors. And so now they can't do the thing they're really good at, and they have to do something they have never practiced, right? The people who should be managers are people who liked group work in school. If you enjoyed group projects, you should be a manager, because that's what management is, the group project.
It really is. It really
How do we get everybody to get on the same page and contribute their own uniqueness to the outcome in a way where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts?
And I think to kind of wrap up this idea around conscience-driven leadership and middle management, I think the other part where we can claim sovereignty, we can claim our power, is in what is the impact I want to have on the humans on my team outside of the KPIs, right? I know for me, working with my core values, I know every time I'm in a leadership position, I want the humans that work with me to feel seen, heard, and valued. So as long as I can do that, as long as I can keep driving towards that impact, I've claimed my power, right? My boundary is if you take away my ability to do that, if you've taken away my ability to make my people feel seen, heard, and valued, then now I know I'm swimming in static, and nothing good for me as an individual human is going to come from this, because now I can't achieve the one impact that I have total control over.
Yeah, and I think of sovereignty and conscience-driven leadership as, imagine yourself as a plant, right? You're in Arizona, so we're going to call you a cactus. Oh, what's your favorite cactus or desert plant? You know, this big cactus
was the queen of the desert.
Saguaro, of course. Okay, so you're a saguaro. Saguaro does really well in the desert. It wants monsoon rains once a year, so it can absorb all that water and then live off of it for a year. It produces magical flowers and feeds bats and all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
A saguaro can thrive in the suburbs of Phoenix or in southern Arizona. But if you move that saguaro, like you put it on a truck like people do, and you move it up to, say, South Dakota, that cactus is not going to be very happy, right? And so if you are a cactus and you find yourself in South Dakota, you have two options. You can either decide this is a bad idea, I need to leave, and find myself a desert where I can survive in the natural habitat. And so if you're in an organization, to use your example, if you're in an organization where your ability to make people feel seen, heard, and valued is curtailed, you can choose to leave that company, right? You have a choice, and it's not your job to protect people from a broken system. It's your job to show them that the broken system is not the only option.
And it's not them.
And it's not them. The system is broken,
Mm-hmm.
and you can explain, I can't stay in the system because my, who I am requires me to be able to, as a manager, show you that you're seen, heard, and valued. That ability is being strangled here. And so I got to go find a different place. So you can transplant yourself, or because many people can't afford a transplant, right?
Yep.
You can get yourself some sun lamps and some perlite to mix into the soil so there's more drainage and you don't get soggy feet. So you can also then build the culture of your unit. For example, with your values of making sure people can feel seen, heard, and valued, it's hard for someone to completely take those away from you. That is about how you operate. But you have to acknowledge this is not ideal conditions. And I'm going to choose to stay in these not ideal conditions because of reasons that are important. I need this paycheck. I have a family. Moving to the sunshine is not an option for me right now, but maybe I'm going to long-term figure out how that is, or I'm going to be open to an opportunity if it comes along. And you've got to make the choice you can make, right? One of the biggest signs that you're hearing static and not signal is the drama triangle. If in your narrative, you are the victim and someone's the villain, if you're the villain or the victim, or anyone's a villain or a victim, that is not the real story. There's more to that story. It is time to look out some other windows and see where you have agency, because none of us are without agency to make choices, even if we don't like the options.
We cannot compress humans into victim and villain. We can't compress them down into black and white. Humans are too complex. That is what makes us different than the whole rest of the planet, is nuance, nuance, nuance. So I love that triangle.
Yeah. And so you don't have to stay in that. If you feel like you're the victim of circumstances, you need to zoom out a little bit and see, where do you have agency? Where are you the hero in a small way? Where can you maintain your integrity, even if it's in a smaller space, and like own that small space, right? Like your cactus is going to be in a tiny greenhouse. It's not going to feel the breeze, but it's going to be warm enough.
100%. And I think, to give a practical example, because so many times when I'm speaking about burnout prevention, I really need to address the elephant in the room that no one is saying, which is this idea of I can't quit. And I think that's the deeper level of burnout that we're experiencing right now. It's one of the drivers, is very few of us have the ability to quit the job that is pushing us to burnout, or make moves that could make it risky for me to stay employed, right? And so I try to call that out right in the very beginning, and I try to give an example of how we can utilize Signal in order to be more sustainable, in order to become a leader who lasts. So one example that I always use is when I was leading a small nonprofit, I was in February trying to plan the giving day, the Tuesday giving day after Thanksgiving, and trying to create all of that content and create the whole story and do all of the things. And that was an aspect of my work that drained me way more than things that should have been draining but weren't, right? And it was the beginning seeds of, how can I adjust this so that it doesn't drain me so much? Because this work is very important to me and I don't want to leave it and I don't want to screw it up. I recognize that one of my core values is presence, and trying to plan how to motivate people to give me money 9 months ahead of time was draining the life out of me. It was all static for me. But social media has to happen. Giving Tuesday is a really big deal for small nonprofits. And so I simply just switched the strategy into recording things right after we would host a program or host a workshop or host a retreat. And then right after, I would just record things off the top of my head, very present and in that moment. This is so cool. This is what happened. This is what someone said. This is the impact that we had. And then by the time we get to Giving Tuesday, we have this whole database of content that doesn't have the begging pick me energy that my previous strategy had, because I was not calibrated to my Signal. I was swimming in the static. And then AI came along. One of the things that you've said in a previous episode that I just loved was that you are a disruptor. Conscious-driven leadership is a disruptor, and it is based on that idea of conscience, and AI has no conscience. I thought that identification of AI lacking conscience and how, like you said, 2 years ago, it was barely here, and now it is very much here, and that trend is increasing. So, how do you think that's going to impact leaders in the next 6 months to a year? The fact that AI does not have a conscience.
I use AI a ton. Like, let me
Same.
just preface with that. You can't not, right? People were like, I don't want to use it. I'm like, then you're at a disadvantage. Although it is a time waster. I just saw an article about how the use of AI has made us way less efficient. And it makes me angry. There's ways you can make it useful, but you have to remember that it doesn't have a conscience. And you will remember when you read its answers because it's constantly making assumptions.
Last week, I was at a conference with a lot of governmental agency leaders, nonprofit leaders, community leaders, and asking them, what is driving your burnout right now? I'm a great conversationalist. We were standing there having coffee in the lobby. What's driving your burnout? Such a nerd. An interesting response was AI. AI is driving my burnout because I am that middle manager and I've been given the decree that we have to use it, even though we haven't actually been told how to use it or how not to use it. And I think we have another lever of influence with that idea of conscience. Can we go back to those leaders and say, okay, we know AI doesn't have a conscience. These are the impacts that require conscience that we are trying to have on the community. So what restrictions, what limitations, what boundaries are we going to put on this AI, knowing it doesn't have a conscience? And I think sometimes that can get across to our leaders.
The consciencelessness of AI is driven by the fact that organizations invest a lot of money in it. And so that's why they're saying you have to use this because we sunk a bunch of money into it. And we now have sunk cost bias that this thing has to be useful, even though it actually just makes everything harder.
Okay, we're almost going to wrap up. This is my last big question. Trust Physics, your book, and the part of it that grabbed me the most was around how your initial foundational concepts of trust were learned around horses. I, myself, have given birth to a horse girl, even though we don't have any horses. And the minute I brought this up, her eyes lit up and she wanted to hear all about it, which, never happens because she's almost 16. So I would love to hear it. Please tell me one story from the book or not from the book that is around how you learned trust physics with horses.
So I was on a horse at 3 days old, right? I was on horses before I could walk for a long time. I grew up on a farm with probably 50 horses, and then we had 65 in the circus. And they were all different kinds of horses, and we did everything you could do with them. We had chariot races and royal lipizzaners and jumping and dressage and square dances on horses and just absolutely everything. And so a horse is much bigger than you. And so you trust it a lot. And it's why girls love horses to such a big degree, is because a horse is this animal that is so much more powerful than you physically, who will just give you its strength and who will do what you ask. To be, especially a young woman where the world is very dangerous, and have the gift of this big-hearted creature who cares about you, because horses do care about you. That's why they're used in therapy so much. There's actually research that the electrical field of a horse's heart can be detected by our instruments at around 30 yards. Bruh. And that's what our instruments can detect. Where a horse can detect your heart field, way farther away. Horses have crazy strong intuitions because they're also prey animals. So they're one of the only prey animals that we have close relationships with. So part of the reason they give you their strength is because it's a relationship to them. It's a two-way relationship. And so because they're so much bigger, you cannot afford to let them get away with anything. If a horse does something a little bit wrong, the correction has to be immediate because it has no idea if you correct it 30 seconds or 3 days later. And if you say nothing in the moment, you're not saying nothing. You're saying that was okay. The yes is implied if there's not a no. And so learning that communication has to happen immediately in order to maintain trust and relationship is absolutely central to trust physics. I'll tell you a story about Camarada, my horse. We lived on my grandmother's farm in Tucson, and we felt always so safe because the horses will always notice a threat before you do. So you don't have to be vigilant. We're out and all the horses clock to something. And we're like, what's over there on the other side of the pasture? That's a very big bobcat with a very long tail. That's a mountain lion. Okay. So we would never have seen the mountain lion if what the horses hadn't told us, and not seeing a mountain lion is how you get eaten by a mountain lion. The horses all notice, and the mountain lion knows it's being watched. So horses will protect you because they see things you don't.
That's something about trust that a lot of leaders miss or forget, is that when you have that connection and that trust with the humans in your organization, they often see the dangers before you do.
100%.
They see where the money is draining out the door. They see the person that is causing potential HR issues. Your people see.
They will only tell you, and they may only notice if they feel the company cares about them.
The trust, if the trust
right?
is
It's
there.
the trust, but it's the reciprocation of it. And that's, I think, why I learned trust from horses, is because it is a two-way communication all the time. You, as a leader, it's your job to build the trust so that they want to share with you, and they know they can, because they know you value their perspective and them as humans more than you value things looking right. And that's so often not the case. So many companies, they don't want to know what the potential problem is, because then they have to deal with it.
All right, Hanna, tell us where we can find your book. Tell us where we can find your program, your podcast, all of it.
Everything is available on conscience-driven-leadership.com. If that is too hard to spell, if you go to ringmasterconsulting.com, it will redirect you there, because my company is Ringmaster Consulting. Trust Physics is there. The podcast is there. If you're into trust physics, I do a monthly Trust Physics Live every month where people can just show up and we talk about a concept in trust physics and just let the conversation go where it wants. I love connecting with people. I'm easy to find. Conscience-Driven Leadership or Ringmaster Consulting, that will find you what you need.
Absolutely. If what Hanna is teaching is resonating with you, it is so worth having a conversation, because when you click in with Hanna, she sees reality. She very gently reveals it to you as well. Maybe I'm talking from experience.
I tend to just have, my X-ray vision is for human motivation, whether that's yours or the people you're working with. I see human problems and they just separate out into layers that are super easy for me to name and articulate in a way that other people can understand. It's the work I love doing. I do this job because it was the thing that happened naturally. And I was like, this is my calling. I need to do this with people. Thank you so much. It's been just delightful to get to know you. And I feel so energized and inspired. I can't wait to see where our friendship develops and evolves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Hanna.
Thank you. And thank you, Terry, for introducing us.
Yes. And just another little shout out at the end. We mentioned Terry. Terry Flores introduced Hanna and I, and I'm so glad. I love having Hanna in my life now. She's a great sounding board, a great friend. So thank you again, Terry Flores. I appreciate you. Now, leaders, I'm talking to you. Your future, my friends, is now. You became a leader because you believed that you could make an impact. And maybe you've realized that the thing standing in the way of that impact is all the things you can't say out loud. You can't give your team real feedback. You can't show that you're struggling to any of your leadership. You can't let your guard down without risking how you're being perceived. Any of that feeling familiar? So you're managing it all day, every day. Well, the question just keeps getting louder. How long can I do this? Am I losing more than I'm gaining? Now, imagine the version of leadership where you get to stop managing that gap between how you feel and how you're allowed to be seen. And you can tell the truth to your team. And you get to build trust with your team instead of it costing you. Where leading generates energy instead of quietly draining your energy. Where who you are, you get to show up as the real you and not, like Hanna said, as the armored up version of you that's trying to survive 2026. To get there, it's a set of learnable skills, and that is the work that I do with leadership. We start with the leadership capacity assessment, where we assess where is the drain the biggest, the depletion, where is it the biggest across all 5 capacities. And then I come in with my framework that allows leaders to understand the why behind every skill that they're building so that they can implement it over and over and over again long after I've left the room. If this sounds like the kind of experience that your team could use, let's chat. You can go to chatwithelenajoy.com to schedule a time, or you can just go to the website or the link in the show notes. Friends, I'm so glad you were here with us today. Until next time, be good to yourselves. I appreciate you.